So just before the video starts, I wanted to give a quick shout out to what is quite possibly the most apt sponsorship I've ever come across for Vivec. Oftentimes I'll decline, well, 99.9% of sponsorship deals I come across, because I just don't think Raid Shadow Legends is very appropriate for the sort of content on this channel. But I know a lot of you like to fall asleep to these report videos, and that's why I thought these COZYSNUG sleep earbuds from LYTMI really are a match made in heaven for this channel and its viewers. If you're anything like me, you might struggle falling to sleep on your back with conventional earbuds in. I'd always wondered whether there were any designs that facilitated side sleeping without waking up with a perforated eardrum. Well, here we are. Not only do these earbuds work wonders for side sleepers, they boast high quality audio, are super lightweight and soft with various different sizes of ear wings to pick and choose from, on top of having 21 hours of charge when using the charging case. So, now you can all quickly and smoothly fall asleep listening to me recount the usual litany of mind-bending, reality-shattering experiences that we all know and love. If you're interested, please check out the link in the description, and don't forget to use the discount code VIVEC for 10% off your order. Anyway, we'll crack on with the video now, but be sure to let me know what you thought of the earbuds if you do end up snatching yourself a pair, and thank you to LYTMI for reaching out, really appreciate it. Heaven and Hell in my unconscious mind. A 2F-fluoro-deschloroketamine and 4-ACO DMT trip report by A.O. Vivec, posted to earwid.org March 2nd, 2019. I don't ever type up trip reports, because no matter how intense or beautiful the trip was, there is always someone out there who has written a better, more detailed report of a similar experience. However, that being said, last night I experienced something induced by two research chemicals that I did not think was possible for drugs to do, even after heavy psychonautical exploration over the last 7 years with every dissociative or psychedelic substance you can possibly imagine. I believe this trip was an intensely personal, subjective one that needs to be shared with the world. I really don't understand what happened to me, but maybe typing it out will help me work through it all. I recently acquired 2 grams of 2FDCK for the sole purpose of holing on it. Thus far, both times I've attempted a large enough dose for a hole, 150mg and 230mg. As soon as I laid down and turned off my light, I fell asleep and woke up the next morning. Disappointing to say the least. I definitely felt there was an unconscious hole happening, but that wasn't lucid enough to experience or remember it. Last night, though, was very different. Setting. I'd just gotten into an argument with my brother and was feeling a bit sad, frustrated. I normally don't go into trips with anything but a positive mindset, but the 2FDCK hadn't been particularly psychedelic in my research, because of my coma-like sleep paralysis. And so, I decided to do some just to sort of numb myself. T plus 0 hours. I began with 136mg divided up into 6 lines. It is a very crystally beige, sticky substance, which I chopped, ground into a powder. I put saline spray up at each nostril and after each line. T plus 30 minutes. The lines have been insufflated. The first 2 to 3 lines are in full effect. The last 2 to 3 are kicking in quick. Typical slowing of thought processes, feeling very tranquil and trance-like. I was feeling so nice at this point, I'd forgiven my brother and decided to go for my initial plan, which was to try and combine 4-ACO DMT with the 2FDCK. In my heavily altered state, I managed to weigh out 15mg, chop it into 2 small bumps, and put them up each nostril. Keep in mind I was being careful in my dosage here, as I've gone up to 50mg on the stuff, which was like a full-blown 4-hour DMT trip. I also weighed out an extra 50 milligrams of the 2-FDCK to insufflate once the 4-ACO had kicked in. T plus 50 minutes. I'm beginning to perceive heavy auditory hallucinations like clanging bells which make me uncomfortable, and decide that it's time for music. I put on Deakin's album, Sleep Cycle, and it is really, utterly beautiful. I lay down in bed and began experiencing typical mushroom-esque colours and visuals on top of the extremely tranquil feeling of the 2-FDCK. T plus 1 hour. The 4-ACO is coming on quite strong at this point, and I'm experiencing pronounced euphoria. I decide it's time to try and go even deeper, go for a hole in fact. I take a hit of cannabis, insufflate the extra 50 milligrams of 2-FDCK, and lay back in bed. T plus 1 hour and 20? ? Well, time loses meaning here, and this is where I'll try my best to explain the bulk of what happened to me. First, I completely dissociated from my body and surroundings. The room broke away from me, and I entered a deep space. Even on my heaviest trips such as DXM and LSD, I've always still had a semblance of my appendages or surroundings. Not this time though. I was truly in a hole, with maroon structures around me shifting and morphing into memories of my past and childhood, while I myself became these structures. The music ends, the auditory hallucinations take over. I am hearing church organs and heavenly voices speaking to me. T plus 1 hour, 30 minutes? I begin to enter heaven. This isn't euphoria, it is something much greater. With each passing moment, I am experiencing a further and further awakening of consciousness. I've always wondered how heaven could be perfect and beautiful if it's just the same old thing, day after day. I now understand that it is very possible when, every second, one becomes more and more enlightened, more and more in tune with their original oneness. Just when I thought I had reached the pinnacle of enlightenment, I continued to expand, just like the universe itself. Strangely, Reddit becomes the dominating motif during this stage of the trip. It becomes the meaning of life, a way for the true interconnectedness of humanity to become one big amorphous consciousness. I see holographic images of karma, upvotes, downvotes floating past me. Based off of my semi-recent rediscovery of the research chemical world through Reddit, after taking some years off after a bad 25i NBOME experience and sticking to the classical psychs, I truly believed that I ingested a combination of drugs that unlocks the key to heaven. An ever-expanding consciousness that experiences a more profound incarnation of beauty and understanding with each passing moment, and that I would never leave it. I was that far gone in the hole. It was truly like floating in space, merging back into the conscious particle that once preceded the Big Bang, which eventually fragmented consciousness into billions of pieces and is the root of our suffering. I was returning back to this original state. Reddit, of all things, was the way to tape these pieces back together, and in fact, I had actually become Reddit itself, experiencing each interaction, thread, person, all at once. I think it was a metaphor that I concocted in my head for the meaning of life. A striving for reintegration, unification of the consciousness of humanity which has been scattered everywhere. Stars are all around me. T plus 2 hours? Here, things suddenly turn around drastically. Rather than expanding and going upward, I begin shrinking, falling into a different dimension entirely. Suddenly, I am in hell, experiencing eternity forever, completely alone. The negation of time, space, arms, and legs are suddenly no longer beautiful, but the worst thing you could ever imagine. It is forever the same thing, over and over again. I will be here for eternity, and I am forever falling deeper into an empty void of nothingness, like that guy in the Black Mirror episode that gets trapped in his own video game out in deep space, or the hammering man in Seattle who is perpetually hammering away day and night. I'm convinced that this is inextricably linked to a book I'm reading for a class. I'm an English major, and we are reading LYTMI by Harriet Wilson. It is utterly and completely heartbreaking. An autobiographical novel of an abused slave, Fredo. She tries so hard to be good and yet still is in hell every day of her life without deserving it. She eventually turns to the Christian God and finds salvation. The trip begins to feel something like salvia now. That everything in my life had been a test, trying to get me to believe in the Christian God, and yet I still denied him. Even though I'm so utterly comfortable in comparison with the hell that Fredo goes through, yet even she found it in herself to believe in the Christian God. Reading LYTMI was my final test, and instead of accepting God, the book actually made me hate him even more for making an innocent person's life so miserable for no reason, and mine so comfortable that I can order drugs off the internet. I see my teacher's face as a motif for an apostle trying to convert me, even though I doubt she's actually a Christian. I truly believe that all the Christian values and ideas pushed on every person in the Western world were actually true, and that I was being punished for not taking the leap of faith and accepting God. It was the one thing that no one is 100% sure about. And all those crazy Christians were goddamn right all along. Damn it. Then, I accept that I failed my test and will be here forever, experiencing all the suffering and pain that the world contains. Things then go completely black. 3:30. I begin to regain consciousness of my room, and even though everything felt so real while it was happening, I'm strangely not surprised at all that it turned out to be a figment of my unconscious mind. It's as if I exited this realm as quickly as I began, and I'm almost sober again. I'm so happy to be alive, and I just lay in bed and try to process what had just happened. 4. I get up and realise my gait is still very off. I'm in a hypnagogic state, feeling extremely relaxed and at peace with the world. I stagger downstairs, nearly sleepwalking, and eat a salad and an apple which tastes beautiful. 4:30. I quickly drift into a deep and restful slumber. My conclusion and reflections is that this was really unlike anything I have ever experienced on substances, which is quite a lot. I journeyed into my subconscious mind. The 2 FDCK dissociated me completely from my body and surroundings, and the 4-ACO allowed for the most profound spiritual insights I've ever had, even of something like 8 grams of potent mushrooms or a DMT breakthrough. I don't actually believe Reddit or Christianity are really as important as they were during the trip, but that they were metaphors. Reddit equals reunification of consciousness. Christianity equals evil, as something that gives a false sense of hope to someone completely alone in an unforgiving world. I would 100% repeat this experience, and plan to try something similar in a couple of weeks. But at the moment, I have so much to reflect on that I definitely need to chill for a while. If you read all this, thank you. I love you all and hope you all find happiness in this life. To me, hell is isolation, solitude, and vice versa. It is important to cherish loved ones, be kind, and try to reduce the overall suffering in this world. That is the meaning of life for me, and it's all I can do until my day of judgment. P.S. Psychs and dissos are a completely different experience when taken together than they are on their own. Excellent report. Loved the unique combination of 2 FDCK and 4-ACO DMT, and how combining dissos and psychs can produce a completely unique and different experience. But what was really fascinating was how he sort of tapped into the idea that, say, source is oneness, consciousness, God, the absolute state of being. For it to experience finitude, it has to enter a world of restriction and limitation, and with that comes suffering, because in the absolute sense, God experiences no suffering because there's no distinction between good or bad. It all just is. It's just eternal love and peace and bliss forever and ever and ever. the inverse that this person experienced, the inverse of loving eternity, was sort of what was going on there. It's actually interesting to analyse there. Maybe perhaps that was part of his journey in the trip to go have experienced the inverse. You can see this in a lot of trips where people have a breakthrough into God realisation, God consciousness, experiencing complete and utter total solipsistic nature of being, but not solipsistic in the negative sense, in the beautiful sense of oneness, and there being absolutely zero suffering and realising it was all imaginary. But then you sort of come back, when you're coming back to your sort of egoic state, it can plunge you into sort of like a hell realm, not literally a hell realm full of demons, but the idea that hell is just eternity of being alone. It's like once the ego starts to crystallise, it starts to mess with the ideas of eternal peace and twist it into something like, oh no, I'm all alone, it's all me, this is so bad. Because then when the ego is sort of starting to crystallise again and the experience of the substances is wearing off, it'll start to mess with it and twist it into its own narrative, because the ego wants to maintain its separation, and it'll do anything to really tie itself back to the finite material plane and create a sense of other to keep itself sane. This is just my insights, but anyway, what I really wanted to get into was to give a little overview of what 2-FDCK actually is. So 2-fluorodeschloroketamine is a dissociative anesthetic related to ketamine, where a chlorine group has been replaced by fluorine. It's been reported as a designer drug in various countries. Here's a more detailed breakdown. This is coming from the AI overview aspect of Google that they've incorporated. I find it really fascinating, especially useful for these commentary sections. Unfortunately, I don't have the actual credentials to just talk about this without looking it up, so I just like to rely on sources that know much better than me. And I think it's useful for anybody who doesn't know, and I know a lot of people don't like typing in things on Google anymore nowadays, so I guess it helps a lot of people for me to break down these substances via the help of, say, AI. I'm all about the AI. People say I glaze it, but I'm saying it's a tool, and like any tool, you can use a tool like a chainsaw, end up chopping your hands off, or killing another person with it, or you can chop down a tree, or start doing some lumberjack work, some joinery, and use a tool in a conscious way. And as far as I'm concerned, AI is no different. It's a tool. It can be used unconsciously or consciously. So that's just my thoughts on the whole matter. But anyway, here's a detailed breakdown of 2-FDCK. Chemical structure. 2-FDCK is an analogue of ketamine, with the chlorine atom in the molecule replaced by a fluorine atom. It's a dissociative anesthetic. Like ketamine, 2-FDCK exhibits dissociative anesthetic properties. This is also quite interesting because when you buy street ketamine, it actually might not be ketamine at all because they look very similar. It's very hard to sort of discern the differences between the chemical experience, the subjective effects of the substance, because, I mean, without a test kit, if you're feeling a level of dissociation and you buy some ketamine off a dealer, you're just naturally going to assume that it is just ketamine, when there's actually so many different analogues that sometimes are cheaper and that the dealer will just use instead, because as far as like most dealers and most people are concerned, if it makes you feel ketty, it's probably ketamine. It's a designer drug and has been reported as a designer drug, meaning it's been synthesized and sold as an alternative to controlled substances. The legal status in the UK is that 2-FDCK is classified as a Class B drug, making it illegal. Fascinating. I would imagine, in my history consuming ketamine from various sources, that I have probably tried 2-FDK, because there's many times where I would have some ketamine in my possession, not that I would ever do that anymore, but I would notice that there was varying different effects from different types of ketamine, and say the person giving you it was like, oh no, this ketamine's just pure, or it's more potent, or it's a different type of ketamine, it's either like R isomer or racemic or S isomer, when actually I believe that many times the different types of ketamine that dealers sell or you find online, or you're just given to at a rave if someone gives you a bump, I think it's very likely that there could be a variation of many of the different analogues, of which 2-FDCK and just this chloroketamine. There's loads of them, we'll cover all of them on the channel, it's fascinating. I've reckoned many of the times when people have had it, they've actually experienced this without knowing it. So, in a sense, I've actually tried even more substances than I could probably assume that I've tried. If I made a list of all the substances I know I've tried, I reckon there's even more subgenres of the substances that I've tried that I had no idea about. I've probably even tried AL-Lad from a tab of what was sold as LSD, so it really is interesting to ponder upon that, and you just realise you never know what you're actually getting when you're buying off a street dealer, unless he's like the most unbelievably conscious street dealer of all time who takes care and is a bit of a connoisseur of his produce and tests it and makes sure it is exactly what it is. But for the most part, I'd say that's not really applicable to most dealers out there. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed this unique combination. I'm really enjoying covering these combination experiences. I learn a lot, you guys learn a lot, and I think it's important to sort of punctuate the rest of the, I know people just want to really hear the Datura and the Salvia and the DMT experiences quite clearly because they're the most popular, but I think it's very important to share the whole gamut of the psychedelic experience, including combinations. Of course, I don't advocate doing it because of the risks, but I like to just observe this stuff from a third-person perspective rather than directly experiencing it myself. So, massive respect to everybody who writes these experiences on Earwid. I think they're doing a great job, and I'm also very honoured to share these with a wider audience because many of these reports on Earwid don't really get that many views. They sort of just fall into obscurity. So I'm really quite honoured to be able to bring them back to life and into the public consciousness. Anyway guys, take care, and I'll see you on the other side.